Competitions are for horses, and yet every single year, hundreds of thousands of very real, very human pianists send in applications, prepare endlessly, pour their blood, sweat, and tears out into their performances at competitions around the world with the hope of taking home the top prize. And the sheer amount of competitions has increased drastically since the time that Bartók said his famous quote. The solo piano competition has a particularly unique potency in the collective imagination. What comes to mind immediately is a place of cutthroat competitiveness, emotional extremes, pianists with their claws out for the other competitors, and their teachers anxiously trembling backstage.
Have you ever heard of competitive edge, in which one looks for ways to dislike one's opponents?
Thinking about competitions today, it's still, of course, I get jitters, you still feel those butterflies in your stomach.
Indeed, Bartók was onto something. I mean, the idea of giving a prize for the best in a field like music, which is so subjective, seems kind of antithetical to the process of art making. This kind of sports-like athletic environment can't be good for music making, right? Well, it's complicated. Most pianists have a quite ambivalent relationship to competitions.
Competitions are a necessary evil. Necessary evil still means it's an evil.
Several pianists who I reached out to discuss this topic for the video didn't even want to talk about it publicly. And even our favorite competition superstar, Yunchan Lim, seemed a bit indifferent about the topic.
슈나벨이라던가 코르토, 호로비츠도 콩쿠르를 안 한 사람들이고 그냥 열심히 하면 그런 것들은 따라온다고 생각하기 때문에 저는 콩쿠르 신경을
Of course, competitions can be a good thing as well. They can expose us to pianists we may never have heard of otherwise. They provide a platform for talented musicians to perform at the highest level. And for us pianists, they can be a goal for us to strive towards, something to push us to the next level in our playing, whether we take home a prize or not.
I wanted to see what I can do with music. I started saying, okay, maybe I can do a little more, and then maybe a little more. I always wanted to try challenging myself even more and more.
Whether we like it or not, competitions aren't going anywhere anytime soon, so we have to learn how to live with them.
The competition isn't the last step, it's the first step.
I'm Fleitz from Tonebase, and today I've had the wonderful opportunity to speak with several prize-winning pianists. These pianists have participated in some of the world's most prestigious piano competitions, and today they've graciously opened up about how to think about competitions in our current musical landscape, the challenges and triumphs in participating in them, and of course, how to prepare for competitions like a real winner without losing yourself in the process.
Always yourself as a musician is the first thing. Don't give in.
Be sure to stick around to the end because you will soon see that the path to winning a competition is far from linear.
I feel like I've made pretty much every mistake that a person can make in preparing over the years.
But before we get started, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more informative and exciting piano content. And while you're at it, be sure to check out Tonebase Premium, which is the platform that makes videos like this possible. So without further ado, let the games begin.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.
What really is the role of the piano competition in our current musical landscape anyway?
Going through the process of a competition, it's quite grueling, and it can, of course, be not always a positive experience. You win some, you lose some, but you could certainly lose all of them.
I think the way I tend to view competitions is as a potential opportunity and absolutely nothing more than that.
It's a question of going through all the preparation steps, presenting yourself on stage in a confident manner, and then walking off that stage with or without a prize and being able to go on, It gave me a lot of benefits for what I do today.
I started competing in international competitions at a pretty late age. I was already mid-20s. Competition was a great tool for me to kind of keep challenging myself.
Basically, my career began with one competition, the Honens competition, which I won in 2018. Actually, before then, you could probably count the number of competitions I've done on one hand. I had done very few. Halfway through my Juilliard years, I decided just to stop doing competitions for a while, just to develop my repertoire and find myself as an artist.
Even after in 2013, I was 23 years old. I told myself I'm officially done, and I really made it that I'm not going to enter another competition, and took a 5-year break. And I went to one final competition, and I remember I went to that one with quite a different mindset, because it was not anymore like, okay, well, if I don't don't win, like, what am I going to do? I went there almost like I would love to prove myself again on the arena. I ended up winning that one. And that was officially it then. I didn't want to ever do it again. You want to end on a high note.
I had my periods of time when I thought that I don't really want to do any more competitions, and asking myself a question, which is a stupid question, I think. What is it for? There is no answer to this question. Lower your ego and be more humble about the artistry and music while you're on stage.
I've had competitions where I've gotten first prize and I've been really unhappy because I didn't like the way that I played. And I've had competitions where I got fourth prize and I was very pleased because I came on stage and managed to present what I wanted.
The most important part is to be sure that you have made everything which was in your hands with your performance, so you're at least not frustrated about that.
So many times I said to myself, like, I'm so finished with these competitions. I don't ever want to experience this pain again. And then you start working on some more repertoire, and you notice after 3 or 4 months, suddenly you're talking to your colleagues and they are talking about, what they're working on when they're going to this competition. And you feel like, hey, you know what? I want to try again. And I think this process, it makes you much stronger.
It's not easy process. Just being in a competition and keep getting judged. It's natural that we keep comparing ourselves to others because that's what competition is doing, right?
I think my favorite thing about competitions actually has been colleagues and getting to hear them and getting inspired by them. I've met so many people that I love and value and who inspire me, and those have been some of the most long-lasting and important relationships in my life.
At some point, especially in the kind of mid to late 20th century, there were not that many competitions, so winning a big prize was a guarantee. Some could be better than others, but you got a career out of it.
To become a top pianist, sooner or later you have to be a winner. And what you have to win is one of the major competitions.
When I won the Chopin, there were 3 competitions at the time, Tchaikovsky, Chopin, and Brussels. If you won one of those, your name would be on the front page of most major newspapers in the world.
Then competitions proliferated. You don't have just like a dozen or half dozen major competitions, but you have a couple dozen important ones.
There's a lot more of them, and of course they have less impact in the world.
For actually getting the desired career, you have to do much more than before. Generally, the level and the competitiveness is much higher these days. People play so well and they come probably on average much more prepared than 50 or 70 years ago.
I think that it's important to find the kind of competition that speaks to your strengths and your profile. I think finding the right kind of match is important.
Pay attention to all the details because all the competitions are doing different things because they have their different missions and what they're really trying to achieve. See who they are secretly looking for and see if you are one of those.
It's also worth reflecting on whether or not competitions are even useful for where you are in your musical journey.
So yeah, there are distinct advantages and disadvantages to doing competitions. And those not only change depending on your own personality, for example, and approach to competitions, but where you are in your development and in what stage of life you are in. For example, if you're doing competitions while you are still in school, at university, at a conservatory, it's a very different thing compared to doing it a couple years after graduating when you might not still be in the, so to say, really formative years of your musical development.
For people like myself who want to work and have some kind of deadlines, it's helping. Because you are evaluated by some professional jury members, you tend to prepare for it maybe sometimes even more carefully.
So there is a kind of motivating force there, which is good. On the other hand, this is the time when you should be learning as much as possible, learning as much music as possible, and having the freedom to experiment with repertoire, with your interpretive approaches, with kind of developing your artistic voice.
If you are one of these people who brings the same program to competitions for 10 years, that's great and it might yield positive results in competition, but once you start a performing career, it gets a little bit difficult to get reinvited when your concerto list is too concerti and your solo repertoire is 2.5 hours long.
Your interpretations might change, your artistic perspectives might change. If you are spending so much time on travel and competitions, you might be missing important classes and seminars and all the things that can inspire you and encourage you to grow. So you really have to find the right time to do this.
One of my mentors in the past always said, don't do any competitions because there are pros and cons, right? And then it might not work for everyone. In the competition setting, we want to see like perfect techniques, no mistakes. That's kind of expected. But those two is just small part of so many things. You might be able to sell your program even better in the community setting. Maybe in more audience-friendly setting, competition shouldn't be just only one way that's gonna guarantee your success as a musician.
The paths towards making a career have somehow become more democratic. You don't require those so-called barriers to entry or barriers of entry to make a career because you don't need those same stepping stones. So it's a very new kind of landscape, and competitions are starting to adjust to that.
The first obstacle to most high-profile piano competitions is the extensive repertoire requirement, which can be hours worth of music. It can be quite tricky to balance your individuality as a pianist with the difficulty of these repertoire requirements.
It's a little bit chaotic for me. Honestly, I would say I prepare as much as I can, which is sometimes not enough.
You have to choose your repertoire carefully to make sure that you're finding the right balance between ticking the boxes of what the competition either requires specifically, or even if you have a very free program, what they would need to hear. The competition jury should be able to compare your playing to certain standards.
I think you have to also think of how it goes together, so not to just think of the competition as something separate from any other concert.
I remember when I was about 18, 19, there were just certain pieces you think will work in a competition because you want to score points, you want to play the really hard stuff.
In my case, I tried to balance out between the standard repertoire with the pieces that I really wanted to spread out to the people. I performed really underrepresented composers. By doing that, I started expanding my repertoire. Like I started finding who I am as a musician.
If you take that risk and you believe in what you do, it can bring a lot more than if you're just like, okay, well, no one does it, so I won't either.
Well, I think everybody should just follow their guts in this case. They will make mistakes as anyone else would make mistakes, but there is no such thing as like one mistake would cost you everything.
Honestly, like there were a lot of colleagues who were saying like, why adding new piece? Like just keep doing the same thing over and over. But I'm that type of person. I know my energy comes from new pieces. Even though I cannot win first prize in the next competition, I still wanted to add new pieces because otherwise I'm gonna always limit myself. I didn't want that.
It can be difficult in a competitive environment when you're comparing yourself to other people to really stay true to your artistic identity, but that's really the core of it. I personally have always had the most success in competitions where I'm playing the repertoire that I care about in the way that I want to play it. The minute that I start thinking about what other people want from me is the minute that I lose, both internally and externally.
You play what you love, you play what moves you, and that's the mantra to go by. And I think in a competition, that should still very much be your goal.
You gotta be really confident with who you are, right? We can tell from the first moment they walk out onto the stage, even before they make the first sound. Just knowing who you are kind of makes your repertoire choices.
I've been given this advice specifically so many times, I just never seem to take it, which is prepare your concerto in advance. The first time that I did like a major competition and did not prepare the concerto, I was 17 and it was Rock 3. I had not touched the concerto for a year. That was not a good idea. I started looking at it again the day before. I hadn't expected to advance that far. I knew that I didn't know the piece. Such a terrible performance, and I was so disoriented that I actually forgot to bow afterward. I'll never forget one of the jurors who was so lovely and kind, coming over afterward, hugging me and telling me, and I will never forget these words, "I just wanted to let you know I really liked the parts you didn't forget." When I was younger, I remember watching competitions online, and I was so judgmental about people's preparation. And, you know, I kind of had this sense that, you know, once I'm in my 20s, I'll make sure I show up everywhere prepared. And then you get a bit older and you realize there are other things to do during the year than to practice the same competition repertoire. Now I have a lot more empathy for people who are playing their concerti in final rounds.
Although pop culture portrays piano competitions as this cutthroat, kind of neck-and-neck competitive environment,
This is not an ashram, sweetie face. This is a battleground.
it's often a place where we actually meet some lifelong friends.
I think the most important thing in competitions is the colleagues that you get to know and the people whose playing you're going to really admire. We want to promote the things that we want to be hearing on stage 50 years from now.
We're all mature professional musicians just making music together, even though this setting is really competitive setting, because music is always priority.
In Germany, there was a competition. In that particular year, I went there with several classmates. We were all in the same school, same age pretty much, and we were preparing together. That I knew all of their repertoire, they knew all of my repertoire. And so after, solid, 6 months of listening to all of their repertoire and knowing what you're competing against, kind of really knowing like, oh, this is how they're going to play it, hearing the comments of the teacher and knowing, that's how they're going to do it. As a joke, we all said something like, it's going to be really funny for us when we go to the competition, maybe we're the ones in the finals. And that was exactly how it turned out. I mean, unbelievably, the three of us were in the finals. The three of us won the top 3 prizes. We were friends all before, and it took some time, but we are friends now again.
When I like somebody's playing, I always try to make sure to let them know. Even if it's somebody who hasn't passed, sometimes I'll hear something and I'll think the jury was so wrong. And I love that. And, I love what you did. I've gotten that from colleagues as well. And I think that's like equally important feedback in a very long-term way, because the jury won't be there forever, and our colleagues hopefully will be around in the profession for a really long time.
I'm still in contact with my friends who I met in competitions, and those are the people I know I will always meet somewhere.
It is a supportive group because it's so difficult. Everyone knows that. Whenever I know of someone going to a competition, I'm always like, wow, only respect.
Building these communities is so important because the competition process can be so grueling. And as pianists, we don't have built-in support systems. We're often practicing for these competitions all by ourselves. So it's so essential that we find communities even within these competitive environments. I think competitions should be viewed with a quite nuanced and quite complex attitude.
Competitions have all of these difficulties, but they also do incredible things for the young artists, even if they don't, when they get to come to a place like Warsaw and play beautiful music for an audience, they get to hear themselves with their competitors, their colleagues.
I think performing on stage for audiences, it is a huge responsibility, and it is an extremely difficult career path. If you are able to somehow make it to the point that you are playing concerts continuously, doing new repertoire, having certain, let's say, musical partners that you work with regularly, you've already somehow won at what we do.
It'll sound a bit corny, but to me, everybody who participates, everybody who gets up on that stage is a winner. We learn so much from hearing our colleagues play the piano, and I've learned so much from watching my colleagues get up on stage and give it their all.
One thing that people should be aware of and prepare that they shouldn't have any expectations. Otherwise, it's one of the most frustrating things on planet Earth you can ever imagine, I think.
It can get very chaotic. The pressure can be, very tough to deal with, and you have to be ready in a kind of holistic way, I think.
I think that if we go into piano competitions with the right attitude, we can create a landscape where they are a force for good in the musical world.
I don't really care about any competition result, and that sounds potentially dismissive, but I don't mean it that way. I care very much about the way that I play. I feel a responsibility to the music and also to my own view of what I want to present, to give it my best effort, but Beyond that, if I've played exactly the way that I want to play and somebody doesn't like it, it doesn't bother me. I'm going to be really happy that I've managed to do what I set out to do, because actually that's kind of rare to play the way that you want to play.
Whether you're a veteran of the competition circuit or you're just getting started in your piano journey, be sure to check out Tonebase Premium. For example, I love Nicolas Namoradze's lesson on Scriabin Etudes, and also Claire Huangci's lessons on Scarlatti Sonatas and Chopin Nocturnes. These are such wonderful resources, and they're just a small fraction of all of what is available on Tonebase Premium. So be sure to check it out by clicking the link in the description below or clicking right up here. Thanks so much for joining us today into this quite thorny topic. I'm thinking about also doing a part 2, actually speaking to competition jury members. So let me know if that sounds exciting to you in the comments below. Let me know also about all of your own complicated and ambivalent and beautiful thoughts about competitions. I would love to hear what you all are thinking. While you're down there, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'm Robert Fleitz from Tonebase, and I thank you again for making it this far. You win the gold prize from me. I will see you next time. Bye.